welcome back, everyone, to this episode of the Big Apple CoRe's podcast. Today I'm here with Dr. Dave Cunic. He is with UCS Advisors. My name is Fred Zebro. I'm with Mohawk Group, and we're going to talk a little bit about Dr. Dave. We did an interview with you once before for our Insights article, and we got tremendous feedback, and people want to hear more, especially everything that's going on with cannabis right now. So we're happy to have you back with us.
Well, Fred, thank you so much for having me be here. I really do appreciate it. And more importantly, beautiful spot y'all got here.
Oh, yeah, it's
this
awesome.
Is very nice, you know, and if you want to talk about energy, good energy. So I really appreciate being here, Fred, so thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. We're hosted by Steelcase, one of our partners, and they have a beautiful space. You know, how can you beat this space on Columbus Circle? So let's jump. We got lots to cover today, so let's jump into it. How did you kind of start in this? I read a lot of what you wrote, and you're in investment relations now. So how did that all kind of come about from investment relations of cannabis?
So great question, and without being too long-winded, I'm actually a doctor of physical therapy, and I got a second doctorate in healthcare management. So there is actually a medical side of things.
Okay.
But I've been blessed to be a serial entrepreneur. Technically, on paper, I've started 15 companies in the last 18 years.
I saw that in your...
I've had 7 exits, some good, some bad. I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
And I've been very blessed. I actually took one of my companies public. I did my own S1, and I also took that same company public over in Europe as well, too.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely some interesting experiences. But
so physical therapy to cannabis, that's a I guess we have medical marijuana, so
we do. So now I always ask, like, Dr. David, how'd you go from this physical therapist running the #1 rated physical therapy clinic in North Jersey to cannabis? And like, well, where's the transition? Well, people don't realize I actually started my medical career in the state of Maine.
Okay.
And in the state of Maine is the second state in America to get medical marijuana.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Most people think it's Colorado, but Maine got it in 1999. I started my medical career.
A long time ago.
Exactly. And I started my medical career in the state of Maine in 2001. So I was already teaching patients how to use medical cannabis instead of opiates. And so I already had that kind of background.
So you were introducing it to your patients back then because it was legalized in the state of Maine.
For medical.
For medical,
Yes. Okay. The one thing about the cannabis industry is that we have to be really careful with the terminology of recreational versus medical, legalized versus non-legalized. So that's why you kind of see me correct a little bit.
Now. No, that's great because our listeners, myself even, do not know about it. I mean, this industry is all new to us. So that's why, you educating me and our listeners is great.
Well, and I appreciate that. And as I said, I started 15 companies, and I've actually started 8 different cannabis companies in 5 different states.
Wow.
So with that being said, I've always had investors. And pretty much when you can find a good deal and you can look past the hood of the car, and you make people money, they're like, show us the next deal.
Yeah.
And also, too, when people ask about investor relations, it's an estimated 56% of business owners in cannabis are first-time business owners. That's a scary number.
And I wonder how many of those fail.
Well, there's a 97% failure rate in the first 5 years in cannabis. So, Fred, thank you for giving me the softball question there. And for the listeners, no, we did not go over that ahead of time, everyone. Yeah. But literally from there, a lot of investors don't know what a good deal is versus a bad deal. A lot of the deals in cannabis, and even including real estate in cannabis, those deals are off market. They're not really given to the venture capitalists. They're not really shopped around. And the really good deals are only on the market maybe for 3 or 4 weeks at a time.
Wow.
And so a lot of people don't realize that. And that's where we kind of come in and we help out with that. And we help a lot of first-time investors in cannabis kind of figure out what's good and what's bad. And you know what? Because at the end of the day, no one wants to waste their money.
Yeah. Well, and especially it really makes a lot of sense is that these people, especially being first-time owners into these business, need an advisor. Because if you're saying 97% of them fail within 5 years, then you better have an advisor on your side to help you kind of walk through this to be successful.
Exactly. And it's also one of those things too where it's a brand new industry, it's a brand new sector, and we're here in New York. But I've been involved in this industry technically since 2001, and in terms of a business owner, I've been involved in it since 2009. And I've sat on several different state boards for cannabis as well too. Now, everyone out here in New York, New Jersey is like, woo, we're excited, yeah, but it's been around for a hot minute. So.
Yeah. We're usually lagging on the.
We'll just say politics and we'll leave it at that.
Yes. And then, so I guess what are some of the benefits in finding some opportunities? Like, so some of your investors coming to you, what are they actually searching out?
It's a great question. And the way I would tell it, if Fred, you came to me and said, hey, I want to start investing in cannabis, the very first question is, how much are you looking to invest? And what's your time frame for your return on investment? And what kind of return on investment are you looking for? We're not traditional broker dealers. We're not taking 50, 60 deals. In 2021, we were given almost 500 pitch decks to review.
Wow.
Only 19 of them we liked. So it wasn't a big number.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the deals that we do like, we're also invested in them as well too.
Personally, your company?
Personally, yeah. Myself personally or my company.
The company,
or,
gotcha.
or maybe a mixture of both. But to
Yep.
go back and answer your question, as a potential investor, people always ask, how do you find these unique deals? And I get asked that a lot. As a business owner myself, it's about the management team. It's about your vision. And more importantly, it's also what's the exit strategy for the investors. So you have that clear plan. There's something when I give a lot of public speaking that we talk about is we call them either hidden gems, or I like to call them dirty diamonds. Okay. You picked up a pebble. It looked dirty. You thought it was a dirty rock. You threw it away. You didn't realize it was actually a dirty diamond that doesn't need to be shined up at all.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
No, that's very cool. Also, you kind of mentioned looking at the whole growth of this industry. Where do you kind of see the cannabis industry going over the next 5 years?
So, loaded question. And I'm going to give you 5 responses.
Okay.
Some of them are just the most typical responses.
Yeah.
In 2009, when I started my first cannabis company, it wasn't cool to be in cannabis. It took me 63 private investors to raise my first $14 million. That's a really large cap table.
Well, I think it still is. You're seeing it now. It still is a little taboo. You see in the news, we have Jersey that just went. Now it's legalized. But when people are asking people, hey, do you use there's still this kind of stigma to say, yeah, I had a glass of wine, but no one wants to say, yeah, I had a gummy.
Well, Fred, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I want to make sure I answer your question. But
correct.
For all the listeners, if you go up to a stranger and say, oh, hey, do you use weed? It means that you're a novice in the industry. You're not taken seriously. And that's not the proper way.
Good
the
point.
proper way is, hey, do you medicate? Or do you participate? If you do, what's your form of medicine? Is it vaporizer? Is it edible? Because now you're actually talking real lingo.
Yeah.
If you say, oh, hey, do you smoke weed? That's like me saying to you, hey, Fred, what kind of pills do your doctors have you on right now for your blood pressure or cholesterol, whatever? No, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's an awesome
so
point.
it's one of those things
the way
where
you kind of come across and communicate.
And it's also someone's privacy as well, too.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Because people do have those prefixed ideas.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about the next 5 years, let's call a spade a spade. We're going to have it federally legalized on some level. When I say that, it means we may go from a Schedule 1 drug to maybe a Schedule 2 or a Schedule 3. We're going to have banking allowed. Once we get the big banks involved, that means we're going to finally get the big financial institutes. Last week, I was attending a different event for cannabis and raising capital. And something that came up was this big money, no pension fund in the United States is involved in cannabis yet. But we all know we have pension funds involved in a bunch of other stocks. What happens when that becomes allowed? You're going to have the big money come. The other thing is mergers and acquisitions. You're going to see a lot of mergers and acquisitions, which they're claiming 2022 is going to be a very big year for mergers and acquisitions in my industry of cannabis. We're going to see that for the next couple of years. And then last but not least, and I'm going to talk about New England. New England has a huge craft beer scene.
Oh, yeah?
All right, yeah, they do, right?
Yeah.
And people now have craft beers.
Everywhere.
Right? Exactly. You're going to see craft cannabis, and you're seeing it already like in the states of Maine and in the states of Massachusetts, where people don't want that, it's like that casual drinker. I just want a whatever bottle of wine or that whatever 6-pack of beer. But someone wants that custom cannabis for that specific condition, or they want that custom-made strain that only comes out once a year.
Yeah. Almost like a wine.
Exactly.
Or
and you're going to have that. And you're going to see that especially come up a lot. There's a certain cannabis company that's in multiple states. I will not say which one. But in the industry, they call them like the Walmart of cannabis. Product ain't great, but it ain't horrible. It's just there, and they're targeting that average consumer who just wants to just grab that joint on the way home, or like or that edible on the way home.
Yeah, like the $1.99 wine at Trader Joe's.
Exactly.
Versus,
$2 Chuck.
Yeah.
Good old $2 Chuck.
You had mentioned something, and I think it's what you just said also about big banks, and I think even tying it to real estate companies too. Is you're right. Right now, a lot of big banks are not involved in these, and is that true? Do you find in the large real estate brokers, are they dealing with a lot of the cannabis retailers, like people that are opening retail stores?
So I don't fully understand your question.
So you had mentioned that a lot of the financing, the big banks kind of stay away from the cannabis industry when cannabis companies are out there trying to lease space, leasing their retail space. I know there's one cannabis company that has like 84 retailers. Who are they dealing with? The large real estate brokers? Are they dealing with more localized, similar to like the publicly traded? Are they dealing with publicly traded companies, or typically it's someone that's not traded?
So I think in a nutshell, because when I was making the comment about the big banks, I'm talking about where they can actually put their institutional money behind projects.
Correct.
More so. In terms of what you're asking in terms of the real estate, it's really a state-by-state cases.
Okay.
State-by-state case, depending on what the rules and regulations are.
Gotcha.
Also, too, depending on a great example, we have a client in Michigan. They've secured several locations, 7 actually.
Wow.
And one of their private investors backed them for all the real estate and said, once you raise that money, you can just buy the real estate off from us directly.
Oh, so
and they have it pre-negotiated ahead of time.
Estate.
So, one of the biggest issues in cannabis, and I'm going to use New Jersey and New York, is you have people trying to raise millions of dollars, but they haven't even secured a lease yet. And then most first-time business owners don't always hire the right advisors to go out and secure that that lease for 3 years, contingent upon getting the license. Say, hey, we'll pay you a little something in the meantime, but if we don't get it, we have an out clause. And you see people get stuck in a rut. Like in Florida last week, we were talking with a client that signed a 3-year lease for a warehouse, and they did not get a license. And now they've just been wasting their money for the last 11 months for something they don't even need.
Oh, now they got to get rid of the asset or do something else with it, or lease it or something like that. You had mentioned, I kept talking about in kind of our pre-talks, is the cannabis industry, and you kind of corrected me.
I did.
And which I thought was fascinating, but your take on that when I talked about the cannabis industry, you had then said?
It's really more so the cannabis sector. I'm sorry, the cannabis economy.
Yeah, the economy.
You're messing with my head here, Fred.
I thought it was fascinating, though, because you're right. It is an economic.
Well, because something you want to talk about. This is about real estate. So let's keep this to real estate. Right? I get asked a lot of times by real estate people the following: well, really, how is real estate needed in the cannabis industry or the cannabis sector moving forward? And the answer is no. Take off that business hat. If I was wearing a baseball hat, take that. Put on a cowboy hat. You got to think, business here, not this pure real estate.
Yep.
This is a cannabis economy, and think about this for a second. We have outdoor greenhouses. That's real estate needed. Okay. You have indoor facilities. That's real estate needed. You have these huge warehouses for indoor grow. That's industrial real estate needed. We have dispensaries, so that's retail. We need that as well too. But now let's take a step further. We in New Jersey, pharmaceutical capital of the United States, they have testing labs and facilities to do research on it, right?
Oh, great
when we need
point.
more research, that's real estate involved for testing labs and facilities. If you have a manufacturing processing facility to make edibles or do extraction labs, well, you know what? That's real estate we need as well too.
Yeah.
So and then let's even talk about beverages too. I mean, every aspect of cannabis, that's why it's a cannabis economy. So when people ask me, especially real estate investors, I tell them all the time, I go, it's an economy. You name it, and cannabis is going to be involved in it. And then you're going to have businesses, like a great example, I worked with a steel company. I don't know anything really about steel.
Yeah.
But they wanted 15% of their business to come from cannabis now, because they want to produce the steel for these indoor grow facilities. Great concept.
Yeah.
They contracted us just to have us help them navigate the cannabis industry. But they had the forward thinking to realize, wait, anything that's regarding that needs steel, we make steel.
Yeah.
Why not take advantage of this right now? And so that's why when you talk about real estate in cannabis, you really look at this as a cannabis economy. And then for some of my real estate broker friends, they go, well, we can't get someone to come in and do this and like take over the space. I go, yeah, because your landlord wants to increase the rent by 50% because they hear the word cannabis.
Oh, yeah, that's
they think they're going to make all
point.
this money. No, they don't get the tax credits. Okay. Also, too, it's very, very cash intensive to open up a cannabis business. You're usually looking at least 3 years to make even money.
Wow.
Now your landlord wants to jack up their prices. You know, if anything, we've actually have instructed some landlords to say, okay, you can do a lease to buy option. You can maybe do a small little equity play for growers. We've actually seen royalties put in the lease as well too over a set period of time. So if the company does do well, the landlord benefits as well too. So that's where you gotta kind of think outside the box of real estate and cannabis. Take off the baseball hat, put on that cowboy hat or whatever, and think outside the box a little bit.
No, you don't think about things like that too, about food. You have all these edibles. So you're right. It's like food. You're going to a food distributor. Like you're making the product. It has to get delivered somewhere too. So you're right. It's a whole
Research,
kind of circular
testing. I mean, we met with a couple weeks ago with a staffing agency for cannabis based out of Michigan. They have 3 offices. All 3 office buildings are all full of cannabis employees. Well, so that's real estate as well too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's growing like crazy, and we're witnessing that firsthand.
We're at the tip of the
New
iceberg.
Jersey.
We are at the tip of the iceberg right now. When it comes to, in my opinion, making still the good return on investment, you really have till about 2024 really to get involved and to invest. Because after that, you're going to see it federally legalized, in my opinion.
Great points. One of the other things I was wondering, and our listeners here, is with this whole ongoing stigma against cannabis, how do you see companies working to lobby for spaces in different markets?
I love this question, Fred, because this is a great real estate question. And when I get asked this question, I usually give a real estate analogy.
Yep.
And here's my analogy. You have a piece of land. The town does not want anyone to build on it. They want to protect it for the environment or for X, Y reason or by a school or whatever. But if you're going to have the builders come in and the contractors come in, they're going to act professional, right? They're going to look professional, right? They're going to tell their subjective story backed by objective data.
Yeah.
So with that being said, that's the approach you have to take. If you come in and you're doing this, for be very blunt, half-assed, and you're not taking this seriously, you're not going to be taken seriously. There is a company called Sapphire Risk Group out of Texas. They're pretty much the OG of cannabis security, and they have clients in I think 10 countries and almost 35 states. And I know the founder very well. And one of the things that I think is fascinating what they do is they actually will go in front of town hall and talk about their criminal assessments. So if you want to build a cannabis facility in a certain town, they'll actually do a crime analysis to prove how your crime rate will go down. Your home value, once again, real estate, will actually go up by having a cannabis facility, and they'll actually present that in front of town hall.
Well, because people don't want, that's the first thing that comes in. People don't want to
But we
grow
talk
houses.
about data.
Yep.
And this is where you ask point blank the stigmas. You need to break down that stigmas. You cannot, most people talk in the subjective, not the objective. If investor relations, we tell people point blank, when it comes to raising money, all you're telling is a subjective story backed by objective data. So once again, if you want to open up a cannabis facility, or you want to get yourself zoned, and something else is for all the landlords listening. You want to have a cannabis business in your building and a great tenant, you, as the landlord of the building or the owner of the building, start to lobby the zoning laws. So you can actually get your building allowed. And here's a great example. New Jersey, right now, about 70% of the towns have not opted in, I could say have opted out of having any cannabis sales.
Yeah.
So that means 30% of the towns left in New Jersey, you can technically do something in. But out of that 30% of the towns you can do something with cannabis, about 50% of them don't even have one building even vacant or even zoned to meet the state requirements. You kind of see the predicament where a lot of landlords, they want to get the money, but they don't want to actually help out with the zoning. And here's a great story.
Interesting.
I had a testing lab in Oregon.
Okay.
All right. And we were zoned in a school zone.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you get that? Pull that off.
The state of Oregon allowed it. The landlord of the building actually knew that his facility could be used for testing labs, and that's it. So he went ahead and he worked with the town. He made sure he was zoned properly so he could attract that type of tenants. So if you want that type of tenants, then you know what? You as a building owner, you as a landlord, start figuring out from the town what you can and cannot do. Because one of the biggest issues we have is when we help out, especially with investors or people who are looking to open up a cannabis business, and they talk with building owners, they go, oh, are you zoned properly? Oh, I don't know. You can find that out for us. Well, if you want to increase my rent by 50%,
better know.
You know, a little quick quote pro here, please. So,
all right, interesting. So, how do you see? You know, we just came legalized in New Jersey. What do you see the future of Jersey, New York, and Connecticut in the tri-state here? What do you see happening with our kind of cannabis being legalized, and what's next for us? Because we have 3 locations, I think, in New Jersey.
So Fred, I'm going to pick on you for a second.
Yeah.
All right, Fred. You need to be more specific with your question now.
Okay.
Are we talking about in terms of investors? Are we talking about real estate owners? Are we talking about just the general cannabis economy?
I think I'm talking about the general. Again, I'm a cannabis novelist.
Okay.
Novice.
Novice, that works.
And so yeah, I would say probably what does it look like from a retail perspective and from an economic standpoint? Like, do we see a lot of growth in this sector for the tri-state?
Okay, so I'm writing down notes just to give you the good answer on this one. All right. So let's take a second, break this down. We have medical versus recreational.
Yep.
All right. I tell everyone in New York, New Jersey, if you can get a medical card, go get a medical card. You'll pay less taxes on your cannabis. You want to save money.
Huh.
It's a no-brainer. And then also, too, if you
Which I don't think people know that. Probably people don't know that.
A lot of people don't know that. Also, too, what happens if something happens to you legally with the police or something? Well, you got a better out clause having a medical card than if you don't have a medical card.
Huh.
Okay. And then also, I can't say for New York, but in New Jersey, if there's a shortage of cannabis, well, if I have a medical card and you don't, I get first dibs. So I tell people, get the medical card, and plus a medical card too, a lot of states offer reciprocity. Great example, the state of Maine does. If I have a medical card, you can get an ounce for maybe $225 of some primo stuff. If you don't have a medical card, well, you're looking at maybe $375 to $400.
Oh, that is a big.
That's a big difference.
The tax. That's because of the tax.
Tax, and then it's also more expensive to get the adult license, so forth and so on. Now the next question is this. One of my big claims to fame is that in the mid-2000s, I was quoted in USA Today calling marijuana modern-day penicillin. Okay, because there's a lot of good uses for it, right? But now let's look at New Jersey. I'm going to pick on New Jersey. In 2019, you had a bunch of additional medical facilities that are supposed to open. But then there are lawsuits, and people don't get their licenses. Yeah. They got their licenses or announced the winners literally 2 weeks before legalization occurred. But now let's view this like a hospital, okay? If you only have right now about 10 locations in the entire state of New Jersey that can sell you cannabis, but we're going to call it penicillin, and you have another 15 facilities waiting for the last 2 or 3 years to also give you penicillin, a.k.a. cannabis, do you really think they're going to make it easier for everyone else to come to market?
Yeah, no.
Exactly. Exactly, all right? So we're going to have that issue first, all right? The next issue is you're going to start to have the whole issue of black market versus non-black market, okay? But once again, let's tie this back to real estate. You need more towns to opt in. And people say, oh, well, it will happen. And it's kind of like, well, look at California. They've had since 1996, and they've had legalization for X amount of years now. There's still a lot of towns that have not opted in. You know, some people say, oh, we should give out unlimited licenses. Yeah, you can do that. But a lot of towns, once again, have not opted in. Not to get into politics, Governor Murphy was one of the first few governors in the country to say, hey, you don't want cannabis in your town? You ain't getting any of the tax revenue. And if you pick on South Jersey, a lot of towns in South Jersey, when cannabis was going to first come out, they're like, oh, no, we don't want it. Now, all of a sudden, they start looking at other states and how much tax revenue comes in. They're like, oh, that would help our schools. That would get some new police cars. That would help out the fire department. That would actually help out our town roads. So to once again full circle about your question, in New York, New Jersey, we are truly at the tip of the iceberg. Between now and 2024, you're going to see a big influx of facilities. You're going to have companies go out of business, especially the smaller ones. I tell people point blank, if you're looking to invest in something, would you invest in just one project or multiple? You want multiple, kind of like real estate. Once you get your first piece of land, they say, oh, you want to keep buying more and increasing your real estate portfolio.
Yeah.
Same exact thing with cannabis. Why would you invest your money into someone that's only going to open up just one dispensary or just one grow?
Yeah.
You'll make some money, but you're not really seeing the bigger picture. You want to get involved in something that's going to do multiple locations. And same exact thing with real estate. Especially for everyone listening, if you own multiple buildings, start working with your town now. Work with your town officials. Figure out what needs to be done to make sure maybe your building is up to code. So I'm going to tell you right now, you have these large multiple state operators that are paying people $100,000 a year just to find real estate. And just find locations. That's how much is being hunted. And real life example, on the way in, driving to the city today, we got a phone call because someone's like, hey, I found a building in a town in New Jersey. It's the only building left zoned, but they want a $2 million deposit.
Wow.
Yeah, $2 million deposit. And then they want a 5-year lease with like 5 one-year options. But what they want is just ungodly, way too high. And they literally said, are you kidding me? And I'm like, no, because it's that tough to find real estate right now. So,
wow. It's really fascinating when you really start breaking it down and just hearing you speak about it. I think it does give our listeners too a whole different take on what really is this cannabis economy.
And let's talk about everyone. Your listeners are real estate people, and this is something I tell people as well too. You could always take $100,000, $200,000, invest it into another cannabis company in another state. Because once you become an investor, what they do, they lift up the hood of the car. You get to look at the engine. I have an investor in New York who invested in deal in Michigan. Well, he was really happy with things, and now he's able to deal with the team in Michigan. They're telling him what they want for real estate, and he actually might have a piece of real estate to do an expansion for them. See, instead of reinventing the wheel, hey, sometimes it's okay to rise someone else's coattails.
Yeah. Well, how has your company grown? Like, have you seen your own company growth because of all of what's happening, especially in our local area?
COVID was a blessing for us.
Okay.
Especially in New York, New Jersey. COVID was a huge blessing because it goes back to the dispensaries and the lack of locations. You saw on News 12 in New Jersey, literally almost a half a mile, people waiting in line to get their medicine.
Yeah.
You saw people had Crohn's disease, literally with a tent and a bucket while waiting in line because there was such a backlog of medicine. Okay. So now let's take it another step further. Is that here, if we go back and look at New Jersey again, with COVID, in New York and New Jersey, it's a lot of old money.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? We'll wait till the banks get involved. We'll see what happens. It's just a fad. Statistically speaking, cannabis has grown every single year by almost over 110% for over 15 years in a row. No other sector's ever done that. But now, take another step further. What happens during a pandemic? What are the two things that do well? Drugs and alcohol.
It's true.
We shut down the liquor stores.
When people thought the liquor stores were shutting down.
No, they didn't. So now we had a bunch of investors, literally in New York and New Jersey, who say to us, "Oh my God, cannabis is here to stay. This whole weed thing, this is really happening."
It's not going anywhere.
I'm like, "Hello, Sherlock. Yes, But the point being is that for our business, we saw a huge increase in twofold. One, we received the most amount of individual investors in 2021 because people made good money on crypto or took advantage of the market, and now they're looking to diversify. And they're saying, we want to do something in cannabis. Yeah. And on the flip side, we actually offer a self-assessment quiz on our website because as a professional fundraising and pitch deck expert, we teach people how to raise money. This goes back to dirty diamonds.
Yeah.
Most people have maybe a good idea, but they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know how to teach investors about it. So we come in and we teach that, but we tell people point blank, hey, here are 12 questions. Take out your phone, record yourself. If you can answer all 12 questions with confidence in 6 minutes or less, you don't need our help, go raise money. If you can't do it, there's a good chance that you're going to need some help. So we saw a big influx of that, especially because we saw a lot of people that want to do New York and New Jersey ancillary services, which is maybe testing labs or manufacturing or packaging, even delivery services as well too.
It's a real lot to uncover and unwrap here.
It's a lot of substance, you know.
Yeah.
I could definitely go down the rabbit hole, but I'm not.
No, I mean, even like reading the article that you had done with us in Insight, it really, it's a whole new world that we have to, that we have to look at and uncover and educate people on, because you've educated me today on a lot of things that I didn't really know about. So I'm sure this is for our listeners as well.
And let's talk about education for a second. I'm a medical guy by trade. In our medical code of ethics, it's our job to empower and to educate the patient. So cannabis is a treatment option. Whether you like it or not, you still got to talk to your patients about it. And then also in our medical code of ethics, there are rules in there that says, okay, if there's a better treatment option that's even against federal law, you're supposed to fight on behalf of your patients.
Yes.
So whether you like it or not, cannabis is here to stay. And I really think the light bulb, especially in the tri-state area, really clicked. We have very little investors in Connecticut. I can pretty much count on one hand how many times I've done business in Connecticut in the last 5 years. But in the last 6 months, I've been in Connecticut over 10 times.
Wow.
Because people are like, wait, this is really here to stay. Like, people are now really seeing that we're not going anywhere. And let's just call a spade a spade. If we look at the area of New England, the surface area of New England is about half the size of the entire West Coast, but twice the population. What? And for all the real estate people, what does that mean?
Yeah,
money.
More money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I think even in New Jersey, when they legalized it originally or passed the law, I don't think anyone really thought it was ever going to happen. And you're right, because you're right. It was like, then all of a sudden the light bulb goes off. Well, something's happening here. And, the lines and everything else proved it this past weekend or whenever we opened. Well, Dr. David, this has been an amazing education, I think, for myself and our listeners. We kind of end our episodes with just some quick, rapid fire kind of questions.
Fire them away at me. I'm ready. Let's do this.
We'll go there. I think I may already know this one because you said it earlier, but kind of what's your favorite way of getting around the city?
I drive. It's time to go. It's time to go. I don't want to wait for public transportation, but I will say, if anyone ever wants to get me a black car service, it's also my second favorite way to get around the city, especially going to and from Yankee Stadium when my beloved Red Sox are in town. Well, easy in, easy out.
Black cars, I would like to do that as well. And what kind of, and this, I think we all want to say, what would we tell our 18-year-old self today?
So I will tell our listeners, you did prep me for this question, and it's a two-part answer. The physical therapist in me, because I've had a bunch of reconstructive knee surgeries and reconstructive hand surgery, 18-year-old me would say, Dr. David, do your home exercise program more often, because I was not a good patient back then. Yeah. But if I had to look back, I would have to truly say to be more observant. I wasn't always aware of my surroundings or how I would project myself, and I didn't realize how that affected people around me. It's just being more observant overall.
Yeah, no, good answer. And what is one thing that kind of sparked your interest in industry news recently?
So one thing that really sparked my interest recently was about the demand and the need for a consumer packaged goods and where that industry is going and how that affects everything with real estate, packaging, labeling, marketing. There's a conference called MJ Unpacked. Okay. They're actually doing a conference in New York City, as well as they're doing one in Las Vegas. And it's only for consumer packaged goods. It's only for accredited investors or for executive level owners. So at the last few conferences I've been attending, the buzz has been about MJ Unpacked, and people are upset. They're like, I can't get in. I don't qualify to get in. What can I do to get in? And it's just interesting to see how everyone wants to go to the conference to now they're limited to the select few. And I thought that was really interesting.
Interesting. My neighbor just tried to go to the Bitcoin conference. That was packed as well. You couldn't get into it. All right, so before we leave, one last question for our listeners is tell us an interesting kind of fun fact about yourself.
The most interesting fact I usually tell people, because I do public speaking now, is I was actually born with a really severe speech impediment with the lack of muscular development in my mouth. So I used to only be able to hum words, and I went to a speech therapist until I was 23. So when you hear me talk, I use very simplistic words. And then when I was in the testing lab sector for cannabis, 5-syllable words, we did not get along very well. But that's probably the most interesting fact to tell people. Because when I get excited, I'll say dude, or I'll slur my words a little bit. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the most interesting fact. A lot of hard work, and now here I am doing podcasts with you, Fred.
You would never ever know. You would
appreciate
never ever know something like that. That's amazing fact. Well, our time has come to an end, unfortunately. But again, our guest was Dr. David Cunic with UCS Advisors, and we're happy that you were able to join us today, and it really some interesting things to think about.
I appreciate having me, Fred, and I appreciate you and your team inviting me. And you know what? I look forward to hopefully being back one day.
Yeah, totally. Until next time.